We all know that the transfer portal giveth, but the transfer portal can also taketh away. Such has been the case in the last 24 hours as Michigan has seen 3 players, one who was thought to be, at least in my depth chart, a starter, 2 others that have been kind of getting some rave reviews here and there. So let's talk about that and what the future holds for Michigan on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy draft day. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast. Well, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And a bit of a shocker yesterday, and 2 more adding in today with the transfer portal, and that those are players departing, not coming to Ann Arbor. Up until this point, really, there's only been one kind of painful one. I would suggest that all 3 of these have a level of pain to them, albeit at varying levels and varying degrees here, right? Like this isn't a star player leaving. This isn't a backup that was expected to be big time, like a Keon Sabb who went to Alabama and who's absolutely thrived there in spring ball. But nonetheless, DJ Waller, who was on pretty much everyone's depth chart, projected to be that starter at cornerback opposite Will Johnson, he ends up departing via the transfer portal. That's not something that really anyone saw coming, but that is the nature of the transfer portal. Now, certainly, if you look around on the Twitter sphere, X sphere, whatever you want to call it, you have rival fans that are trying to pretend like this is a doom and gloom scenario. It is not. When it all kind of comes down to and this could be also by design if Michigan kind of felt like Waller was on borrowed time, but it felt like Jair Hill was the one who was kind of getting the accolades. And when it came to the spring game, it wasn't DJ Waller that we were talking about. It was Jair Hill, who seemed to be everywhere, have a nose for the football. I don't think that Waller is necessarily leaving because Hill passed him, but I think that Hill has progressed enough now where it's like, okay, they're in a good spot. This isn't necessarily a dire circumstance. That said, I mean, I think that you do need to try to find some depth in the portal. But even though you've got Cody Jones, you got Miles Pollard, guys that have just been kind of biding their time and needing to kind of get it together, connecting the dots in between the ears, all that stuff. But nonetheless, I feel like they have options there, but it's getting thinner. And you want to feel like you've got a 3-man rotation at the absolute least. Jane McBurrows will certainly be in that conversation, especially since it seems Zeke Berry is the one who's getting the accolades for the nickel position. So you do kind of maybe need to dip into the transfer portal and find some other guys that are going to help you there. I have seen a lot of names out there. I haven't talked to anyone at Michigan yet to find out kind of what they're thinking. But nonetheless, it does feel like there are options out there to kind of solidify. And we saw that last year, right? We saw that with Josh Wallace coming in. At this time last year, everyone was lamenting the fact that Amarian Walker was not as advertised. He looked like a flat-out liability. No one wanted to sit there and say, well, maybe he can get it together by fall. Michigan certainly didn't, and it shored up the position and ended up being okay, right? So I feel good about Jair Hill compared to how I did maybe 2 weeks ago or even a week ago. And there's a reason why you've got Sharon Moore singing his accolades and all of that. But then there was 2 more that entered the transfer portal today, both in-state products. One of them is an early enrollee, and the other one is a sophomore. Not exactly an ideal scenario. And one of them is surprising to me because he's a guy that's been mentioned pretty much by every coach that would talk to you about. Brian Jean-Marie mentioned him. I'm pretty sure Wink Martindale mentioned him. I've had other players say he's really coming on strong. And it's the early enrollee, Jeremiah Beasley, formerly of Belleville. It sounded like he was kind of ahead of the curve. Felt like he was a guy that could absolutely have that Jimmy Rolder freshman year type guy where he could have come in, maybe made a couple plays here and there. But at the same time, I don't think that's a painful one, more so for the future as far as the immediacy of it all. I don't think it's quite as painful because they have guys that they're they're counting on, like Jaden Hood, Micah Pollard. I mentioned Jimmy Rolder, Samaj Bridgman. They've got lots of guys that are kind of in that linebacker rotation that have just been kind of also biding their time as well. But to have a guy like, listen, one of the things about linebackers, I've said this for years. I learned this from Steve Lorenz, to be honest. He said to me back in 2016 that one of the things that Michigan was lacking, despite the fact they had good linebackers, they didn't have elite linebackers. And when you looked around college football, the teams that won national championships were the ones that had the elite linebacking play. You even go forward to 2018 with the 17 and 18 with Devin Bush. Devin Bush was elite, but outside of him, because remember they played more of a 4-3. They had two guys that were, if you can count Khaleke Hudson in there, who was very good and obviously still playing in the NFL, but it was kind of a rotation next to him. It wasn't like full on elite play. It was one really elite linebacker, and then kind of not so much after that. Whereas the last 3 years, they've gotten pretty close to elite linebacker play. Josh Ross might not have been that guy necessarily, but he had the leadership and he made plays when it mattered. And then you look at Junior Colson, who's been excellent for the last couple of years. You look at Michael Barrett, who really took a big step forward. Ernest Hausman. I mean, they were mistake erasers. They were, not that they had a lot of mistakes, but that's the type of play that they got. And you look at what they are right now with Jayshon Barham and Ernie Hausman. You feel really good about that linebacking core. Amir Herring is the other guy who entered the transfer portal, and that one's kind of surprising as well. Wes Bloomfield, his former head coach, is obviously on the offensive staff at Michigan. Ron Bellamy, former four-star offensive lineman. He enters the transfer portal. He's a guy I think I had on my I've seen other people say he wasn't in the two deep. That's probably accurate, but I had him as a potential guy that could have been in the two deep after spring, which we talked about when we went through the offense about a week and a half ago. So, I mean, that's still, it's not great, right? But at the same time, it's a position group that can afford to lose a little bit of depth. But so far, Michigan has been pretty much immune from having a big time player going. That certainly could change at any point. It's certainly not the wish casting that you see coming out of East Lansing or Columbus, which out of East Lansing, that's kind of hilarious that you still see some Twitter personalities who are really wish casting only to see their entire team basically departing via the portal. But Michigan's held things together for the most part. We've got about 5 more days to endure and hope that you can kind of keep the band together, because certainly this is a world that's a different world, right? Tampering exists. It's basically, it's not legalized, but it's the blind eyes are being turned against them. But you've got that, you've got NIL, all these different things that aren't necessarily, Michigan's not necessarily doing a great job of yet. So it's kind of a dire circumstance to some degree. Hold it together for 5 more days and see where you can go. And then see if you can pull some guys out of the portal. Certainly they're looking for wide receivers. They're hosting CJ West soon. Again, I cannot be more excited about him as a prospect. I know Michigan is as well, based off of conversations that I've had. But it'll be interesting to see kind of where they go. But so far, I mean, it's kind of expected attrition, just maybe not the names that you would anticipate. So nonetheless, to this point, mostly good. Mostly good job by the staff. You would have hoped to retain all 3 of those guys, and you would have hoped to retain Keon Sabb, but you see a lot worse happening elsewhere. Anyway, all right, let's talk about the complexion of the team. We will finish out just talking a little bit about Dusty May and the job he's done. It's been just absolutely phenomenal as far as assembling everything. So we'll get to all of that here in just a moment. But before we do, it's playoff time in the NBA, NHL. It's NFL draft today. It's starting tonight. Baseball's in full swing. And guess what? FanDuel can get you in on the action with all of those. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. That's win or lose. Just place any bet. Win or lose, you get $150 bonus bets. It's just absolutely phenomenal. So bet on everything from slap shots to home runs, slam dunks, on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. That's FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. We'll continue on here in just a moment, but listen, I've talked to you before about how we've all been there You're a player. You're a fan. It's halftime. Score does not look good, right? I think back to actually end of the first quarter, kneeling by Tom Brady, Michigan versus Colorado 2016. Didn't look good. I didn't feel good. Tom Brady's like, I got to get out of here. Guy next to him says, it's not looking good. What are you doing? He's like, guess what? Michigan's got this. So when you're feeling low and your team can't pull out a win, that's when you dig deep. You have that same confidence that that bravado that Tom Brady has. You say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heist, take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. Okay, maybe not exactly an even-to-even analogy. But that's right, the Smash Hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone. It's anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards, and you can compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. You can charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends if you don't want to be the antagonistic type. Crack open community chests and in tournaments and to get extra rewards to climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, download Monopoly Go right now for free on the App Store or Google Play. Little stammery today. That's just the type of day it is. Still not 100%, unfortunately, but some health issues came roaring back over the last couple of days. I'm fine. I don't need any. This is just me explaining why maybe I don't seem as like I've got the same joie de vivre as you're accustomed to, or why I keep on struggling to get words out. Just had a little bit of a back setback over the last 2 days, but we'll survive. Nonetheless, what does the team look like? Because obviously, I would imagine there's going to be at least another couple that enter the portal at this point. Chris Ballas is alluding to that on 3. Doesn't seem concerned that you're going to see any real big names go. Certainly it's possible, but nonetheless, it's until you get to that April 30th, May 1st day, right? There's going to be possibly some more attrition. But as everything stands right now, I like the complexion of the team. I'm not 100% sure what it's going to be in terms of win or loss, right? I think that you can kind of play Jalen Milroe style football with Alex Orji. I think Jack Tuttle is a guy that people are sleeping on. I think if you add a receiver or two, I think that you could really be in a really good spot offensively. Because the more I think about it, Michigan is still in that position where it's like, good luck against all of the options, especially defensively, of course. Like, there's no real place that you can attack. And if they can show, if Jair Hill plays the way he did in the spring game, I think that's an upgrade on Josh Wallace, potentially. And the rest of the group, I feel pretty good about. So there's no obvious well, you got to throw at that guy. There isn't that. You got to run away from this guy on the line. Good luck. You're going to run on the arms of someone else. But offensively, it still feels like there's a lot of options. Donovan Edwards doesn't get talked about enough. We talked with Max Chadwick on the last show about Colston Loveland and what he brings to the table. More and more people are looking at him as being that number one guy. Certainly, he's got that capability. Marlon Klein opposite him could really take that step forward considering his speed. We saw a little bit of that in the spring game. You add in Samaj Morgan, the fact that Fred Moore did the same type of thing as Tyler Morris, who's also still on the team, and just kind of outran the entire defense. Granted, not the number one defense out there, but still, you saw the speed, you saw the vision, you saw all of those things kind of working together. If you add another playmaker or two at the wide receiving core, just make it a little more diverse. That feels like that's a real do you cover Donovan? Do you cover Samaj? Do you cover maybe a portal receiver? Do you cover Colston? Lots of different options for the quarterback. And then if it ends up being an Orji type that can actually carry the ball, then it's kind of then you got to defend him too. That makes things a little bit more. That's kind of why I like Orji in that sense, is because if he is a run threat more so than anyone else, you have to defend that too. It makes the defense have to be on its heels a little bit more, right? You can't just hone in on, Donovan Edwards. You can't just hone in on Colston Loveland. You got to kind of prepare for all 11, which is a really kind of smart way to go. But I do feel like there is just a lot that is certainly kind of in Michigan's favor when it comes to having a lot of high-end talent. If you recall, why was Josh Pate from 24/7 Sports? He's a friend of the show. He hasn't been on the show yet. He's agreed to do it. I just haven't made it happen. But why did he pick Ohio State to win everything last year? Well, it's because Ohio State, in all of the projections, the preseason projections, had the most supposed first-round talent that was likely to be selected. And obviously, that doesn't always hold true, that the team with the most first-round talent ends up winning the championship, because Michigan only has one guy, maybe two, that could be selected tonight in J.J. McCarthy. And, sometimes you see like Mikey Sainer still slip into that first round. Hopefully that happens for him, looking at you, Detroit Lions. But nonetheless, I think that when you look at the amount of potential first-round talent on this team, it's a lot. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson, Colston Loveland. I mean, Donovan Edwards, certainly, like, he's not getting talked about enough. He's not getting talked about in the same way he was a year ago at this time, but he should be, because he still has that in his repertoire, and you saw that in the national championship game. That's 5 guys that all have that potential. Donovan might be kind of a little bit more the odd man out there, because you don't often see running backs going that high. But considering his diverse skill set, they use him a lot in the passing game, and he kind of has that Jahmyr Gibbs style of because that's kind of a pretty decent comp in a lot of ways. Maybe not exactly the same player, but same type of skill set as Jahmyr Gibbs. Get him involved in the pass game. He's kind of a home run threat. We saw a little bit of wiggle in the spring game. Suddenly you're cooking with gas. So there certainly can be a lot of reasons why Michigan should be a little bit better than people think. Again, as long as they keep the band together. And it certainly looks like they will. But I think that people forget how much high-end talent is on this team still. And as much as the rivals like to laugh about that, it's still true. Like, these are all players that are considered to be at or near the top of their positions. Colston Loveland, considered to be the best tight end. Will Johnson, considered to be maybe the best defensive back, corner, or safety in the country. I think ESPN had him the 3rd best defensive back. You've just got a lot of players that certainly can rise up to that are also like Makari Page, Rod Moore when he comes back. Zeke Berry could be that at nickelback. I mean, they've got a lot of options. Mason Graham is considered the best defensive tackle. Kenneth Grant's considered number 7. Pretty good place to be coming from. So I think that they, as long as, again, they can keep everything together, it could all bode quite well. All right, let's continue on. Let's discuss a little bit of the job that Dusty May has done. It was a torrid weekend for him, and suddenly we have a new look Michigan basketball team. Let's talk about that here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, you've got all kinds of events coming up, concerts, theater, comedy. Major League Baseball's now in full swing. If you want to get to the game, there's one easy way to do that. It's the best way, and that's Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. My personal favorite thing about it is the seat views, because you can know exactly what you're sitting behind. I got burned once just going through the one of the mainline ticket venues, going on a date in 2006, trying to go see a musical. Turns out we had an obstructive view. You won't have to worry about that with Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Download Gametime, the app, today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, I want to pull this up because I'm I can tell you I already forget a lot of names. Really, Michigan basketball has one roster spot, maybe two left at this point. Heck of a job, it just like basically overnight by Dusty May. And I think even better part is all these guys are signed. You're not looking at the Caleb Love situation. All of them are signed to my knowledge, at least as far as I've seen. But really, really solid job when it comes to straight up recruiting. Got Justin Pippen in, Scottie Pippen's son. So I guess we'll see Scottie at Chrysler. That'll be exciting. As someone who grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, that's when I paid attention to basketball. I stopped after the Pistons won the second one. I was very young. I was like 9. But nonetheless, Justin Pippen, excited to have a NBA, I almost said NBC, NBA legacy coming to Chrysler. That's cool stuff. Then you've got all of the transfers. Well, actually, technically, Lorenzo Cason, the 3-star, was committed to FAU. He's in the fold as well. He flips over, and he was like I said, he was a 3-star. He wasn't as highly rated as Pippen, who's a top 100 guy. But nonetheless, it's a good pickup. But all of these transfers, man, I mean, it's a solid grab. Danny Wolf leading the charge, the Yale center. Sam Walters, the Alabama forward. Roddy Gale coming over from Ohio State. Ohio State fans, they mad. Much higher high school recruit. He's the highest of all of these in terms of the high school. Then you've got Trey Donaldson from Auburn. One of the things I kind of love about what's going on here, because again, you still got Namari Burnett, who was at Alabama. You got Namari Burnett and Sam Walters, Alabama guys. You got Trey Donaldson from Auburn. You've got rival. You got Roddy Gale from Ohio State. Now at Michigan, you got all these rivalries, but all on the same team now. So that's kind of exciting. Reuben Jones from North Texas. He's kind of the guy that I didn't even see when he committed, to be honest. But now you pretty much got a full solid team, and if they can play together, you're in good shape. Now you got a lot of guards. I think that's the interesting thing. Justin Pippen, Lorenzo Cason, Roddy Gale, Trey Donaldson, and Reuben Jones. A lot of guards. So who's your point guard? Is probably Trey Donaldson. So you can look at a backcourt of him and Namari and Roddy Gale and Reuben Jones. I mean, I think one of the interesting things too is some of these guys can shoot. Sam Walters can shoot. You didn't see a lot of time, but he can shoot. So you feel like the roster construction is maybe a little bit better now than it was before. But it's going to take some time to really kind of get used to this new look Michigan basketball team, because it's going to be literally brand new, right? Like you have like basically very few holdovers. You got, Will Shetter. Is Jace Howard coming back? We'll see. Namari Burnett. And that's it. Like really, like it's not like what we're normally accustomed to. So this is kind of the transfer portal giveth part of it, right? The transfer portal taketh away, which is kind of fine when you have the worst record you've ever had. And while you hate to lose Doug McDaniel and Terrace Reed, it in some ways maybe it ends up being all right, because if you look at it and you're like, okay, well, Trey Donaldson and Danny Wolf, and people are still saying Vlad Golden is probably going to be in the fold. We'll see how that turns out. It feels a lot different. It feels in a good way. So I think kudos to Dusty May for really being on the grind, and he's doing some fun stuff too. He's going to frat houses. He's at the spring game. It feels like what Michigan basketball heads coach should be, like a younger Beeline in a lot of ways, right? Like kind of what you would expect in terms of that, and he just has that same kind of aura about him. So it's an exciting new era. So we just touched on that. That's all I got. I don't have a ton of thoughts on that. So the plan was I was going to do some post-draft stuff. We're probably going to save that for tomorrow now. And then we'll do a Saturday show, maybe an early one and then maybe a later one. That's what we're going to try to do. We're definitely going to hit this draft harder when it kind of makes more sense to do so. But anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back soon. Peace.